Picture this. In autumn 2025, Chinese and Taiwanese leaders meet, not to argue sovereignty, but to open a joint research center for semiconductors and pandemic prevention. Once unthinkable, this scenario is now quietly discussed in diplomatic circles. The Taiwan Strait, long seen as a global flashpoint, is at a potential turning point. Economic pressures and technological needs are pushing both sides toward pragmatic collaboration. This isn't about unification, but about a strategic partnership born from necessity. Both Beijing and Taipei face internal and external challenges that cooperation could help address. A China-Taiwan détente could redraw Asia's economic and political map, challenging U.S. policy assumptions. What if the world's most dangerous flashpoint became a model for pragmatic cooperation? To grasp the significance of any 2025 cooperation, we must understand the deep historical divide. The split began in 1949, when the nationalists fled to Taiwan after losing the Civil War to the Communists. Both sides claimed to be the sole legitimate government of China, fueling decades of hostility. U.S. support for Taiwan and Beijing's One China principle shaped global diplomacy, leaving Taiwan isolated. Meanwhile, Taiwan transformed into a vibrant democracy, deepening its differences with the mainland's one-party rule. A unique Taiwanese identity emerged, especially among the young. This legacy of civil war, military standoff, and diverging political paths has bred deep mistrust. Any cooperation must overcome these entrenched grievances. The challenge is monumental, but not impossible. Despite decades of simmering political tension and moments of open hostility, the relationship between China and Taiwan is far more complex than it appears on the surface. Beneath the headlines, economic integration has quietly, yet powerfully, bound China and Taiwan together in ways that are often overlooked. Since the late 1980s, waves of Taiwanese investment have poured into the Chinese mainland, fueling China's rapid industrial rise and transforming entire regions. At the same time, China's vast consumer market has propelled Taiwanese firms to new heights, offering opportunities for growth and innovation that would have been unimaginable decades ago. Today, China stands as Taiwan's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade exceeding $200 billion every year, a staggering figure that underscores their economic interdependence. Taiwanese companies like TSMC and Foxconn are not just major players in their own right. They are central to global technology supply chains, linking the economies of both sides and the world at large. This deep, intricate interdependence means that a clean break between the two economies is nearly impossible, with countless businesses and livelihoods at stake. Any military conflict would devastate both sides, shattering critical industries, disrupting global supply chains, and putting millions of jobs at risk. Not just in China and Taiwan, but around the world. For leaders in Beijing, the staggering economic cost of war acts as a powerful deterrent, forcing them to weigh the risks of conflict against the benefits of continued prosperity. Decades of business-driven integration have created fertile ground for cooperation, fostering relationships that transcend political divides and encourage dialogue. In the end, economics, more than politics, may hold the true key to peace, offering incentives for stability and mutual benefit that are hard to ignore. The question that remains is whether pragmatism and shared economic interests can ultimately overcome old hostilities and chart a new path forward for both sides. The push for change in 2025 is driven by converging pressures. China faces economic headwinds, demographic challenges, and U.S. sanctions, making access to Taiwan's tech sector vital. For Beijing, cooperation offers a lower-risk path to technological advancement than military action. Taiwan, meanwhile, seeks stability amid superpower rivalry and recognizes the risks of over-reliance on the U.S. Pragmatic engagement with the mainland could hedge against uncertainty and open new opportunities. A new generation in both societies values peace and prosperity over confrontation. The old playbook of threats and isolation is losing its appeal. Economic necessity and shifting public opinion are creating space for dialogue. 2025 could be a year of unique possibility, if leaders seize it. Any rapprochement would start with practical, low-risk collaboration. Joint research zones in technology, perhaps on neutral ground, could foster innovation in semiconductors, green energy, and AI. Public health and environmental protection are ripe for cooperation, with shared protocols for pandemics and pollution. These efforts would build trust and deliver tangible benefits without touching sensitive political issues. Financial integration and streamlined trade could further bind the two economies. Cultural exchanges, films, academic programs, museum exhibits could help rebuild mutual understanding. Small steps in these areas could generate momentum for broader stability. The path forward is incremental, but potentially transformative. A China-Taiwan detente would send shockwaves across the globe, compelling nations to fundamentally reconsider their diplomatic and security alliances. The long-standing tensions in the Taiwan Strait have shaped global strategies for decades, and a sudden easing would force governments to reevaluate their positions and priorities. Southeast Asian nations, always wary of instability, would likely welcome the reduction in tensions. However, this new calm could also open the door to greater Chinese influence in the region, as Beijing might use its improved image to strengthen economic and political ties, potentially shifting the balance of power within ASEAN and beyond. U.S. allies like Japan and South Korea, who have long relied on American military support as a deterrent, might begin to question the necessity of such a large U.S. presence if the immediate threat to Taiwan diminishes. This could spark domestic debates about defense spending and sovereignty, and even lead to calls for a more independent security posture. Economic ties with China could deepen significantly as regional players and global investors grow more confident in the stability of East Asia. This shift might encourage new trade agreements, increased investment, and a realignment of supply chains, further integrating China into the global economy. In Europe, a thaw in China-Taiwan relations could weaken the arguments of those pushing for a hardline stance against Beijing. Instead, European nations might pursue more independent and pragmatic engagement with China, seeking economic opportunities while balancing their own strategic interests. The US-led order in the Indo-Pacific would face unprecedented challenges as shifting alliances and new security dynamics emerge. Washington may need to rethink its strategy, adapting to a landscape where its influence is no longer taken for granted. As a result, nations may increasingly pivot toward flexible, issue-based coalitions rather than relying solely on rigid, traditional alliances. This could lead to a more dynamic and unpredictable diplomatic environment where partnerships shift according to evolving interests. A historic handshake across the strait could become a powerful symbol, accelerating the transition toward a multipolar world where no single power dominates and regional actors gain greater autonomy. The balance of power in Asia and far beyond would be up for renegotiation as countries reassess their roles and seek new ways to protect their interests in a rapidly changing environment. The world would have to adapt quickly to this new reality as governments, businesses, and ordinary people alike navigate the uncertainties and opportunities of a transformed international order. For the United States, the prospect of a closer partnership between China and Taiwan presents a complex and challenging dilemma, a true double-edged sword that could reshape the entire balance of power in Asia. On one hand, a reduction in tensions across the Taiwan Strait could be celebrated as a major diplomatic victory. Such a breakthrough would lower the risk of military conflict, bring greater stability to global markets, and offer hope for peaceful coexistence in a region often marked by uncertainty. Yet, on the other hand, this new alignment could undermine the very rationale for America's long-standing military presence in Asia. If China and Taiwan move closer, the US might find its influence waning, its alliances questioned, and its strategic foothold in the Pacific less secure. Economically, a stronger China-Taiwan bloc could pose a direct challenge to US dominance in technology, manufacturing, and global trade. The combined innovation and production power of these two economies could shift the competitive landscape, threatening American leadership in critical industries like semiconductors and advanced electronics. Washington now faces a difficult crossroads. Should it support a peaceful detente and risk losing leverage, or oppose closer ties and risk being seen as an obstacle to peace and progress in the region? To remain relevant, the US may need to shift its strategy, moving away from a focus on military deterrence and toward stronger economic competition and more active diplomatic engagement with both China and Taiwan. Supporting Taiwan's autonomy while managing China's rise will require a delicate balancing act, demanding both resolve and flexibility from American policymakers. The stakes could not be higher for American strategy in the region, as every decision will have far-reaching consequences for security, prosperity, and influence. Ultimately, the outcome of this evolving situation could redefine what U.S. leadership in Asia looks like for decades to come, shaping alliances, trade, and the future of peace in the Pacific. Navigating this new and uncertain landscape will test Washington's resolve, adaptability, and vision for its role on the world stage. Collaboration offers huge rewards and serious risks. For Taiwan, peace and economic opportunity are tempting, but there's fear of creeping political assimilation. Critics warn that economic ties could erode Taiwan's autonomy, making resistance to Beijing harder over time. For China, peaceful engagement boosts its image and access to technology, but also risks liberalizing influences from Taiwan. A failed partnership could backfire, fueling pro-independent sentiment and setting back Beijing's goals. Both sides must balance opportunity with caution. The path is narrow, and missteps could have lasting consequences. Success would require trust, vigilance, and a clear-eyed view of each side's red lines. In mid-2025, the Taiwan Strait stands at a crossroads. Decades of conflict are being challenged by a surge of pragmatic self-interest. Economic integration and global pressures are pushing both sides to consider cooperation. The rewards are great, but so are the risks: autonomy for Taiwan, political consequences for China. Deep mistrust and nationalism could still derail progress. The outcome depends on the courage and vision of today's leaders. The world watches. Will this be a new chapter or just a fleeting moment?